Hi everybody, how you doing? Here with your week 7 assignment this week. It is Friday, May 15th. Um, and this week we're going to be taking a look at Andrew Jackson. We're going to get right to it this week. I hope that you are all doing fantastic and you had a great week this week. Go right into classroom. You go into class work per usual. You see it right here, week 7, remote learning, Andrew Jackson. Okay, we take a look at our assignment. Down the bottom, as always, our documents are attached here, the notes, the Google Doc that goes over your tasks for the week, and I will upload the link to this video walkthrough right here per usual once it is uploaded to YouTube and I have a link for it, okay? Same rubric as usual, okay? Accountability and personal responsibility is what we are looking at in terms of on top of the work that you put out. Okay, so we get right into it. This week, we're going to be looking at Andrew Jackson and his presidency, a lot of the things that he did, and you guys this week are going to put him on trial. Andrew Jackson's presidency is on trial this week, and you guys will be leading that trial. You will either be a prosecutor or a defense attorney when we look at the presidency of Andrew Jackson. We're going to have some fun with this week, okay? So over the last few weeks, we've been building up the causes of the tension growing within the country that will ultimately lead to civil war. And this week, we stay on that course, okay? We look at the presidency of Andrew Jackson, and we look at how the policies passed by his administration continue to fuel this growing tension between the North and the South, okay? And like I said, you are going to either be a prosecutor or the defense and build an argument for how Andrew Jackson should be remembered, okay? Using this video, using the reading that we have, using the notes, and any outside resources that you would like to supplement, okay? As always, I have some additional links for videos in there for you. If there's something that you find, feel free to use it. Make sure that it is credible, obviously, okay? Was he a hero for the common man, or was he a savage leader guilty of brutal attacks? Okay, we're going to take a look at it this week, okay? So, right to it, we have our notes for the week here. Let me slide the window there. Here we go. Okay, so this ties in our previous lessons that we've talked about, building up from industrialization, when we looked at industrialization in the United States, coming over these ideas from Britain, and the country is beginning to industrialize, especially in the North, okay? And in the South, there's a real focus on agriculture, and a lot of the inventions and the advancements that are being made at this time are really accelerating things that are happening. Okay, then we looked at the Missouri Compromise last week. Okay, we have this really, really tense issue between our northern states and our southern states over states' rights and free state versus slave state. This is a problem that's only going to get worse. The Missouri Compromise was only a band-aid, okay, and it's going to continue to accelerate. Okay, the act of secession almost comes into play here with Jackson as president, and Jackson stops it, to his credit. Okay, so we're going to look at all of that this week and all of these underlying causes that have been boiling under the surface for so long that will eventually, in a couple weeks, result in civil war. Okay, so like I said, this week we're learning about Jackson. You'll be putting him on trial. How should he be remembered? You'll either defend his presidency and everything that he did for the common man. Was he a war hero from the War of 1812 who inspired great nationalism in the people of the United States? Okay? Or was he a savage leader guilty of promoting plantation farming and brutalizing Native Americans? Okay? It's up to you to decide that this week. So first, we look at the corrupt bargain in Jacksonian democracy. No Federalist ran in the election of 1824. We're looking at the election of 1824 here, by the way, okay? After James Monroe, okay? No Federalists ran, because if you remember a couple weeks back in the War of 1812, the Federalist Party dies out. They're pretty embarrassed because they tried to sort of subvert the War of 1812, and then we end up kind of winning the Battle of New Orleans and coming away. I know it's a stalemate. No one really won, but, you know, the Federalist Party looks really bad. They go away by 1820. So it is all Democratic Republicans running for president in 1824. Now, there is great division growing within the Democratic Republican Party at this time, which we will get to, okay? And essentially, the final two guys that it comes down to is Andrew Jackson versus John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams, who drafted the Monroe Doctrine, we hopefully remember, is John Adams's son. Small world. Jackson wins the popular vote, but as we know, the popular vote does not win you the presidency. You have to win the majority in the Electoral College. Neither of them won the majority needed to win the Electoral College, so the House of Representatives has to determine a winner. There's a video down here to give you guys some more information on this election, the election of 1824. It was kind of a very, very heated affair, okay? Now, this brings us to the corrupt bargain. Henry Clay, who literally led the way with the Missouri Compromise. Henry Clay is also going to lead the way next week when we talk about the Compromise of 1850. He is a great compromiser, okay? But in terms of how he gets along with Jackson here, not great, because he was one of the people who ran against him. He is a senator from Kentucky, and he now holds a decisive position in determining who goes on to become president. He did not favor Andrew Jackson. He despised him, as a matter of fact. So what Clay does is he forges the Ohio Valley New England Coalition, and that secures the White House for John Quincy Adams. Pulled enough people together to push John Quincy Adams over the top to the presidency. So in return for doing this, John Quincy Adams names Henry Clay his Secretary of State. The reason that's important is because A, it's a very important position, and B, it's a position that had been the stepping stone to the presidency for the previous 4 Secretary of States. So it's kind of in a pattern here where you go from being Secretary of State to eventually ascending to the office of the presidency. So it's a pretty big deal, and that's why it's called the corrupt bargain, okay? Jackson and his followers immediately begin to call it this, the corrupt bargain, okay? To Jacksonians, this alliance symbolizes the corrupt system where elite insiders pursue their own interests without caring about the will of the people. Okay, this helped influence the election of 1828, 4 years from now after John Quincy Adams' first term, because Jackson's supporters rally behind this anger. Okay, that and a lot more people are now able to vote by the next election. It's no longer just for landowners can vote, so like 1 million more people can vote. So that plays a lot into the next election too. But they really take this slight to heart. Okay, Jackson is a man of the people. Jackson campaigns on the idea of the common man. Jackson becomes the symbol of American democracy, or Jacksonian democracy as it's known. The belief the common man should control the government, not the other way around, okay? By the election of 1828, Jackson's supporters called themselves Democrats instead of Democratic Republicans. This Democratic Republican Party has now fractured. You have our landowners who back farming, more of our Thomas Jefferson types, that are now just Democrats, okay? And Republicans now tend to be more of the wealthy elite at this time, okay? More of our Federalists, so kind of think along those lines, okay? These people that have been fractured off from here are going to be called the Whig Party. I'll get to that in a minute, okay? Supporters of Jackson are the ordinary farmers, the workers, and the poor, not the rich. He is not a man of the rich elite. Jackson beats John Quincy Adams in the 1828 election. The victory symbolizes true democracy over the aristocracy, the common man over the elite. Jackson promised to, quote, throw the rich out and return the government to the people. What a guy. Tariffs and nullification. Tariffs are taxes, okay? And people do not like taxes. They didn't back then. We don't now. Tariffs are the taxes paid on imported or exported goods. They were favored in the North because it promoted industry, okay? The North had a lot of factories, and they had a lot of money to make off of these raised tariffs. But in the South, it raises the cost of living, okay? The Southerners hate it because they're now having to pay more money in tariffs, okay? Whereas the North is raking it in, but the South is paying more. So in 1828, Congress passes a higher tariff, which Southerners call the tariff of abominations. They hate it. They don't like taxes to begin with, and then they go about raising them. Vice President under Jackson, John C. Calhoun, opposed the tariff and eventually supports the idea of what is called nullification. That means that states could void or nullify any federal law that they deem unconstitutional. Jackson signs the new law to lower the tariff, replacing it with the tariff of 1832. So Jackson tries to cool things off by lowering the tariff. He tries to come to an agreement with Congress to sort of meet them in the middle and lower it, okay? But in 1832, the South Carolina government nullifies the tariff. They are still not happy, even though he lowers it a bit. Jackson strongly disagrees with nullification, as well as his vice president, Calhoun, not a fan. He does not agree with the fact that John C. Calhoun promotes this. And he plans to use military force to enforce federal law in South Carolina. Okay? So because South Carolina is going against this, he threatens to use the military to stop them. South Carolina's response? To secede from the Union. They stop it from happening. Congress reduces the tariff in 1833, which resolves the crisis. Okay. However, tension between the North and the South is growing as fast as ever. Okay, because of this disagreement in the tariffs, and South Carolina basically saying we're going to secede because of this. Okay, Jackson is able to put that on hold. Now, nice work by Jackson, avoiding the secession of South Carolina and keeping the country together. But now we're going to talk about Indian removal, one of the biggest black eyes in American history, okay? There are many moments in the United States that we have, as Americans, may not be overly proud of, okay? And Indian removal is certainly one of them. This is a map right here showing lands occupied by Native Americans. The problem is that the supporters of Jackson are the common man, the farmers, plantation owners that live in the South, and they want this land for farming. This is fertile farmland, and they want it, and they believe that it is theirs. 80% of Jackson's vote comes from the South. In return, they wanted to help removing 60,000 American Indians living in this region because it's the perfect land to grow cotton. This opens land to white settlers to farm, which will expand slavery. The Indians belong to a number of different nations, and many Indians in the area adopted American culture. They tried to Americanize because they believed that this would put them in the good graces of the government. And they collectively became known as the 5 civilized tribes. But many white Americans did not feel that Native Americans could ever really be civilized. Awful, I know. Between 1827 and 1830, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama dissolved Indian governments and took their land. The Indians took the case to John Marshall's Supreme Court. We remember John Marshall from Marbury versus Madison. And John Marshall tries to help them and ruled that the acts of the states were unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional to take Native Americans' land. It's theirs. President Jackson ignored the ruling. In this case, Jackson favored states' rights. States' rights are another one of those underlying issues that is going to lead to civil war. And states' rights are the state's belief that they can govern themselves, that they do not always have to listen to the government. They can choose whatever they please, okay? States' rights is another underlying cause of the Civil War. So the Indian Removal Act of 1830 is supposed to be a peaceful negotiation to exchange the land of Native Americans in the South for lands in Indian territory. Let me jump a slide to show you where that is. If I go back here, excuse me, which is in here, Oklahoma territory, okay? This is where they are proposing that they remove to, okay? 2 tribes do agree to relocate. Some resisted. And the United States troops forcibly removed the Creek Indians from their land. In Florida, the Seminole fought the Second Seminole War against the United States, and in the end, American troops forced most Seminoles to leave their land. This results in the Trail of Tears. Trail of Tears was a small group of Cherokee made a deal with the government to relocate, but many protested this, okay? This is being told that your land is no longer yours, and you have to move many, many hundreds of miles away. So in an effort to enforce this treaty, in 1838, the United States sends soldiers under now President Martin Van Buren, okay? And they forced 16,000 Cherokee to walk from their lands to Oklahoma. and this is known as the Trail of Tears. Over 4,000 die of exposure, disease, and hunger. One of the most awful periods in United States history, the Trail of Tears, forcing these tribes to walk from their land to the Oklahoma Territory here. They literally showed up. These people were not on the Trail of Tears. These people were not given time to pack their things and get their goods. The military showed up and literally told them they were leaving now, and you were walking. This instant, okay? Very, very awful moment in United States history. I have a video here, a couple minutes long, on the Trail of Tears, and another video here on Andrew Jackson and the Indian Removal Act to help go into a little bit more depth on this, okay? The next thing we're looking at with Jackson, and one of the last things we're going to look at with Jackson, is his dealings with banks and the growth, the birth of political parties, the rebirth of new political parties after the division of the Democratic Republic. So Jacksonian Democrats favor Jefferson's idea of an agrarian lifestyle, farming, agriculture. Northern industry created corruption and greed, they believed. They disliked the second bank of the United States. Think about the bank that Alexander Hamilton created. Yes, this is the second bank of the United States because they see it as corrupt and that it only favors rich investors. Jackson believed the bank was, quote, a monster that needed to be chained. I have a 4-minute video here on the bank war if you would like it for enrichment. Many business leaders favored the bank as it provided stable currency and it helped to promote economic growth. Many of these supporters were in Congress who voted to renew the bank's charter. And Jackson strongly opposes it because he felt it only helped the rich and not the common man, so he vetoes it. The bank supporters felt that Jackson was overstepping, that he's stepping on the rights of Congress to put this through. So Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, who are supporters of the bank, form a new political party called the Whig Party. The Whig Party are nationalists who want a strong federal government to manage the economy. Does this sound familiar? Strong federal government, the rich elite, okay? Like our Federalists from 30 years prior. They favored protective tariffs, internal improvements, and a national bank. And the emergence of this new political party renews the two-party system. You now have the Democrats, who are Jackson, and you have the Whigs, who are our Henry Clays and our Daniel Websters here. So what I did was I created this historical synthesis chart to sort of help you visualize the comparison here. So Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson, similar, okay? Now, I'm not saying that, you know, Jefferson carried out the acts such as the Trail of Tears like Jackson did, but I'm making the synthesis that they are like-minded politically. They are Democratic Republican in nature, but we now have Jackson calling himself a Democrat, Jacksonian democracy. They believe in agriculture and farming, and they believe in a loose government with power to the people, okay? Hands-off government. Whereas our Henry Clays are more like our Alexander Hamiltons, much like our Federalists. We have the Whig Party, which is similar. They support industry and business and a strong central government. Okay, so that right there are your weekly notes. We go into our assignment here, which is located right down here. It is a Google Doc that brings up your task for the week. Again, like I went over earlier, it's to read and examine who Andrew Jackson was and how he impacted the country. Over the last few weeks, we've mentioned the growing divide in the country. This week, we go to the year 1828 when he is elected, even before when we talk about the events leading up to, and how the policies passed by his administration continue to fuel the growing tension between the North and the South. And you are going to judge and decide how Andrew Jackson should be remembered. Okay? Remember, this week, after you read the section below, you are going to create a visual representation to show how you believe President Jackson should be remembered. Was he a hero for the common man, or was he a savage leader, guilty of brutal attacks? Okay, so again, you're either defending his presidency. You're either a defense attorney here who's defending Andrew Jackson. He was a war hero in 1812, won the Battle of New Orleans in 1815, okay? Basically forcing the British out, okay? Even though the war had already kind of come to an end. He wins the Battle of New Orleans and he inspires this nationalism. He's a fantastic although ruthless, military leader, and he is a champion and a hero for the common man. Or he's a savage leader who is guilty of brutal attacks, pushing the Native Americans off of their land, okay? So you're gonna use your notes, which are located here, the video lesson, which I'm gonna link in Classroom, and the reading below. And I want you guys to pick a format to present this, much like last week where you guys created a PowerPoint presentation on the Missouri Compromise. Excuse me, I was thinking about industrialization. Okay, you're going to choose something creative to make this. Google Slides, a Canva, a political cartoon or drawing. I think that would be fantastic to draw a political cartoon on this. Or you could make a video. I would love to see a video on this too, where you talk about the reasons, okay? Give me 3 reasons when you're talking about this, okay? Your week 7 assignment is due Friday, May 22nd, a week from today, okay? And this here, right below the assignment, is your reading. This one is a touch longer, okay? It's 4.5 pages long. You guys can do it. I believe in you. And then again, down here is a restatement of your task. When you are done, as always, you upload it to the assignment on Classroom. That is all I have for you this week. I hope that you are all doing fantastic. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope you have a great week ahead. I hope to see you in class this week. I would love to see you. All right.